Today's video takes you inside a heated congressional hearing where emotions ran high and every word counted. Watch as Pam Bondi confronts Jasmine Crockett with shouting and pointed objections, but Crockett's calm. Fact-based responses turn the moment viral. This isn't just politics. It's a masterclass in composure, preparation, and credibility under pressure. Stick around, you'll want to see every second of this extraordinary showdown. The hearing room was tense from the moment members filed in. Cameras clicked, phones recorded, and the air was thick with anticipation. Everyone knew the session would be heated after all. It wasn't just another routine congressional hearing. Today, two seasoned figures, Jasmine Crockett and Pam Bondi, were at the center of a political showdown that had already captured national attention. Pam Bondi, former Attorney General with a reputation for forceful courtroom demeanor, had a tendency to let passion overshadow subtlety. She strode into the room with sharp movements, scanning the audience and members of the committee before settling into her seat. Jasmine Crockett, in contrast, arrived calmly, with neatly organized documents and a quiet confidence that immediately commanded respect. The session began with procedural formalities, but it didn't take long before Bondi made her point known. Her voice suddenly rose above the chatter as she addressed Crockett directly, emphasizing her objections and critiques in a tone that bordered on confrontational. Some observers in the room flinched slightly at the intensity, but Crockett maintained her composure. Instead of responding in kind, Crockett methodically referred to the documents she had prepared. She presented each fact with clarity, connecting numbers to outcomes, policies to public impact. Her voice remained even, her gestures precise. Each page she set on the table reinforced her arguments with undeniable evidence. Bondi's expression shifted between frustration and incredulity. Every calm explanation from Crockett seemed to amplify Bondi's visible agitation. The contrast was striking. One woman's emotional intensity versus the other's composed, factual articulation. Cameras and journalists caught every second, and the footage quickly began circulating online. Crockett's approach was simple yet effective. Let the facts speak for themselves. She didn't interrupt Bondi unnecessarily. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she repeated key statistics, highlighted discrepancies in claims, and ensured that every statement was backed by verifiable documents. Her demeanor subtly suggested that professionalism, preparation, and composure were far more persuasive than loud objections. The audience in the chamber began to notice the dynamic shift. Bondi's interruptions and sharp questions initially seemed to dominate the room. But as Crockett calmly dismantled each point with evidence, murmurs of approval spread among the observers. Some committee members leaned forward, nodding at Crockett's logical, concise delivery. Others glanced at Bondi, who struggled to maintain her footing in the debate. A particularly notable moment came when Bondi raised her voice, accusing Crockett of ignoring certain implications in the documents. Crockett looked up, made eye contact, and responded in a measured tone. "Miss Bondi, I appreciate your concern. That section of the report is addressed in the subsequent pages, which clarify the connections you're highlighting. Let me walk you through them step by step." With that calm, methodical reply, Crockett turned a heated confrontation into a teaching moment. She wasn't just defending her position. She was demonstrating a professional standard that contrasted sharply with Bondi's emotional delivery. Reporters began to record every word, noting the stark difference between emotional outbursts and composed argumentation. Social media clips started appearing within minutes, highlighting Crockett's measured responses alongside Bondi's loud interruptions. The footage quickly went viral, sparking conversations about decorum, professionalism, and effective communication in high-stakes political settings. As the hearing continued, Crockett maintained her pace. She referenced previous cases, cited specific regulations, and outlined implications for the public, always returning to the central theme of her argument. Bondi continued to challenge her verbally, but Crockett's calm, factual presentation consistently neutralized. Now, the attempts to dominate the discussion through volume alone, members of the committee seemed increasingly impressed. While Bondi's tone remained emotional, Crockett's composed delivery conveyed authority, preparation, and credibility. Each time Bondi raised a pointed question or shouted an objection, Crockett calmly placed a document on the table, explained its relevance, and connected it to the broader narrative with clarity. By the end of the first segment, it was clear that Crockett's strategy was effective. The viral moment wasn't just about the confrontation itself. It was about demonstrating how calm, evidence-based reasoning could prevail over emotional intensity. Viewers online quickly recognized the contrast, praising Crockett for professionalism and intelligence. Even political commentators, who might have been critical of Crockett, acknowledged her composure. The footage highlighted the importance of preparation, fact-based argumentation, and emotional regulation in the public sphere. The incident also ignited discussions about leadership, communication, and the ways public officials can maintain credibility in confrontational situations. As the session adjourned for a short break, Crockett gathered her documents and quietly reviewed her notes. She didn't celebrate or show triumph. She remained focused on the task at hand. Bondi, meanwhile, left the room, appearing frustrated but still determined to continue pressing her points in that moment. It was evident to observers. The viral sensation wasn't simply about loud confrontations or sensational reactions, was about the enduring power of calm, factual reasoning in an environment often dominated by emotion and spectacle. Crockett had turned a high-pressure encounter into a demonstration of professionalism and clarity, leaving a lasting impression on both the public and political insiders alike. After the initial confrontation, the tension in the hearing room didn't subside. Cameras continued rolling, capturing every exchange. And social media had already begun buzzing with clips of Crockett's composed responses, juxtaposed with Bondi's vocal outbursts. Some viewers admired Bondi's passion, but many were captivated by Crockett's unflappable demeanor and fact-driven approach. As the session resumed, Bondi attempted to regain control by pressing Crockett on complex legal precedents. She raised her voice again, projecting authority and urgency, hoping to unsettle her opponent. Yet Crockett remained centered. She adjusted her glasses, tapped her pen lightly on the folder before her, and addressed each question systematically. "Ms. Bondi, thank you for raising that point," Crockett said evenly. "The precedent you reference applies in a different context. Allow me to explain how it aligns with the evidence in front of us." Her calm, deliberate tone diffused the tension in the room. Witnesses, aides, and committee members leaned in to listen. Every explanation was backed by documentation, citations, charts, and reference notes carefully prepared beforehand. Crockett's attention to detail made it difficult for Bondi to redirect the narrative through sheer force of personality alone. Bondi's frustration became more evident. She waved her hands emphatically, interjecting with questions and challenges. But Crockett responded without raising her voice, always returning to facts and logic. Respectfully, Crockett continued, "Our goal here is to understand the implications of the documents and data before us. The facts, rather than volume, provide clarity for the committee and the public. Let me walk you through this section, point by point." As she spoke, the cameras captured the contrast vividly. Crockett's measured delivery, paired with her methodical presentation of evidence, created a stark visual and auditory difference from Bondi's heightened emotion. The internet quickly picked up on the contrast, sparking conversations about leadership, professionalism, and the effectiveness of calm, prepared argumentation throughout the hour. Crockett maintained this approach. She addressed each of Bondi's interruptions by acknowledging the concern and providing evidence-based explanations. At times, she even anticipated Bondi's next line of questioning, presenting preemptive clarifications. This strategy subtly shifted the dynamics, instead of a battle of volume. The hearing became a showcase of logical reasoning and organizational skill. Observers in the room, including journalists and congressional aides, noticed how Crockett's composure affected the tone of the session. While Bondi's interruptions initially commanded attention, Crockett's unwavering focus and clarity gradually commanded respect. Members of the committee nodded in agreement, and a few whispered comments noted the effectiveness of her strategy at one point. Bondi raised a particularly challenging question regarding a sensitive policy detail. Crockett paused briefly, reviewed the documents in front of her, and then responded with precision. "Ms. Bondi, I understand the concern you've raised. According to Section 4 of this report, the implications you're highlighting are addressed comprehensively in this table. As you can see, the evidence supports a different interpretation than the one proposed, and here's why." Her explanation, calm and methodical, left little room for dispute. The committee members nodded, and Bondi's frustrated glance revealed that her emotional strategy was losing effectiveness. The social media reaction mirrored the unfolding events. Clips circulated rapidly, emphasizing the contrast between Crockett's composed presentation and Bondi's vocal intensity. Analysts commented on how professionalism, preparation, and clear communication could dominate even high-pressure political confrontations. Public opinion began favoring Crockett's approach, praising her for keeping the discussion focused on facts rather than personal attacks. Later in the session, a small side exchange provided another viral moment. Bondi attempted to interrupt Crockett mid-sentence, but Crockett simply held up her hand, smiled faintly, and said, "Please allow me to finish this point. I believe clarity benefits all of us here." The audience and cameras captured this with fascination. Crockett's calm assertion of control, without aggression or confrontation, reinforced her credibility and leadership. The incident illustrated that authority in debate does not necessarily come from volume, but from composure, preparation, and clarity of thought. As the hearing drew to a close, Crockett summarized the key points, restating facts with precision and linking them to broader policy implications. Bondi had pushed hard, but Crockett had remained unshaken, effectively demonstrating how evidence-based reasoning could overcome attempts to dominate through emotion. Reporters began preparing their analyses even before the gavel fell. The viral clips and social media commentary highlighted a critical lesson in political and legal confrontations. Emotional outbursts may capture attention momentarily, but calm, prepared, and factual responses resonate longer and command lasting respect. When the session finally ended, Crockett quietly gathered her documents, exchanged brief words with her team, and left the chamber with the same calm confidence she had shown throughout. Bondi, still visibly frustrated, departed in contrast, her intensity leaving a different impression on the public. By the end of the day, the narrative had shifted. Instead of focusing solely on the conflict itself, commentators and viewers were discussing professionalism, clarity, and the impact of evidence over volume. Crockett's measured, factual approach had become the defining feature of the hearing, and the viral response reflected that public perception. Observers noted that this hearing was not just about policy or politics, was a demonstration of how calm, prepared, and factual reasoning can dominate in high-pressure, high-stakes situations. Crockett's approach became a benchmark for effective public engagement, reinforcing that composure and preparation are often more persuasive than anger or theatrics. The next day, the political and media response to Crockett's viral moment intensified. Clips of her calm, methodical replies were circulating rapidly across social media platforms, and commentary flooded in from journalists, analysts, and viewers alike. Some celebrated Crockett's professionalism, while others debated Bondi's emotional style. But the consensus was clear. Crockett had shown how facts and composure could outshine volume and theatrics. Crockett returned to the hearing room with her team, prepared for the follow-up session. Bondi appeared determined to regain control of the narrative. Her energy was high, her gestures sharp, and her voice projected authority. The contrast between the two women was immediately evident. Bondi's style was passionate and reactive, while Crockett's was calm, structured, and evidence-driven. As the session began, Bondi challenged Crockett on procedural details, attempting to rattle her with rapid-fire questions. But Crockett, anticipating these tactics, responded with precision. She cited documents, explained policy nuances, and clarified data points with a methodical clarity that left little room for misinterpretation. Each explanation subtly demonstrated that preparation and calm reasoning could withstand even the most aggressive questioning. Ms. Bondi, thank you for highlighting this concern, Crockett said evenly. But if we examine the evidence in Section 5, it becomes clear that the interpretation you're suggesting does not align with the documented outcomes. Allow me to walk you through the data. Her calm, respectful tone contrasted sharply with Bondi's rising frustration. Observers noted that Crockett's composure subtly shifted the dynamics in the room. Where Bondi's raised voice initially dominated attention, Crockett's factual and measured responses began to command respect. Committee members leaned forward, engaged by the clarity and logic of her explanations. As the hearing continued, Crockett systematically addressed each point of contention. She referenced prior cases, highlighted inconsistencies, and clarified policy interpretations, all without raising her voice or reacting emotionally. Bondi's interruptions became less effective. The more she shouted, the more Crockett's composed responses highlighted the difference between emotional intensity and professional reasoning. A particularly memorable exchange occurred when Bondi attempted to challenge Crockett's interpretation of a report on funding allocations. Crockett calmly held up the relevant pages and said, "Ms. Bondi, I understand the concern you've raised. The figures here show that the outcomes differ from the assumption you're presenting. Let me walk you through the specifics so the committee can see the evidence clearly." The committee members nodded, and even some of Bondi's aides appeared uncertain. The viral footage of this exchange quickly circulated online, further cementing Crockett's reputation for calm authority under pressure. Social media users praised her ability to handle aggression with grace, turning the confrontation into a teaching moment rather than a spectacle. Between the formal proceedings, Crockett's team monitored the live reactions. Lena Ortiz, her communications director, pointed out trends in social media comments. "People are responding to how composed and factual you are," Lena said. "They're noticing the contrast with Ms. Bondi's approach. The conversation is shifting from confrontation to substance." Crockett smiled. "That's the point. This isn't about winning a shouting match. It's about demonstrating that preparation, clarity, and facts carry weight. People respond to reason more than spectacle." As the session progressed, the intensity increased. Bondi attempted to challenge Crockett on hypothetical scenarios, trying to create ambiguity. But Crockett anticipated these tactics and presented her responses with evidence-backed clarity. She kept the focus on public policy, the implications for citizens, and the importance of accountability and transparency. By the end of the day, the viral moment had grown beyond a simple clash in the hearing room. Analysts discussed it on news programs. Commentators on social media debated the effectiveness of calm professionalism versus emotional intensity. And ordinary viewers praised Crockett for showing how evidence and preparation could dominate even in high-pressure situations. Crockett's team reflected on the day's outcomes. "The message is resonating," Lena said. "People see the power of calm, fact-based reasoning. They're starting to reconsider how emotional outbursts are perceived in public discourse." Crockett nodded. "Exactly. This is about demonstrating that credibility, composure, and clarity matter more than theatrics. When the facts are presented effectively, they speak for themselves. As the hearing adjourned, Crockett gathered her notes and exchanged brief words with her team. Bondi left visibly frustrated, while Crockett's calm confidence remained intact. The contrast had left a lasting impression, reinforcing the lesson that measured. Factual communication is often more persuasive and impactful than loud. Emotional arguments. In the following hours, news outlets, social media accounts, and political analysts continued to highlight Crockett's composed approach. The viral clips were shared widely, emphasizing not only her knowledge, but her professionalism under pressure. It became clear that the story was not about conflict alone, was about demonstrating effective communication. The power of facts and the impact of calm leadership in contentious situations. Crockett's methodical, composed, and evidence-based approach had set a new standard for public discourse. She had shown that preparation, professionalism, and clarity could prevail in moments of high tension, leaving a lasting impression on both the public and political insiders alike. The final day of the hearing began with palpable tension. Everyone in the chamber understood that the climax of the confrontation between Pam Bondi and Jasmine Crockett was near. Reporters and staff alike had reviewed the viral clips from the previous sessions, and expectations were high. Crockett entered the room calmly, her documents neatly arranged, projecting the same quiet confidence that had become her trademark. Bondi, on the other hand, seemed determined to reclaim attention. She moved briskly to her seat, gesturing animatedly as if to signal that she would not be overshadowed. Yet, the energy of the room suggested that the audience, both in the chamber and online, was already attuned to Crockett's methodical, composed style as the hearing began. Bondi launched into a series of rapid-fire objections and pointed questions, attempting to unsettle Crockett. But Crockett, prepared for every scenario, responded with precision. She carefully cited evidence, referenced documents, and explained the implications of each point in a calm, structured manner. "Ms. Bondi, I appreciate your concerns," Crockett said evenly. "However, the data in this report directly addresses your questions. Let me guide you and the committee through the relevant sections so that the evidence is clear." Every time Bondi raised her voice, Crockett's composed explanations drew more attention. Journalists in the chamber noted the contrast, where Bondi's intensity was loud but fleeting. Crockett's calm authority anchored the conversation. Observers leaned forward, committee members nodded, and even Bondi's aides seemed momentarily unsettled by the clarity and professionalism displayed. Throughout the session, Crockett maintained a consistent approach. She acknowledged Bondi's concerns respectfully, provided detailed evidence-based responses, and returned to the central theme of the discussion: public accountability, policy clarity, and factual integrity. At one particularly charged moment, Bondi raised a hypothetical scenario meant to complicate Crockett's explanations. Crockett paused briefly, allowed the point to be fully stated, and then responded, "Ms. Bondi, I understand the hypothetical you're presenting. The report's data, however, shows the outcomes differ from what is assumed in your scenario. Let me outline the specifics so that the committee and the public can see the facts clearly and objectively." The room went silent as Crockett presented her evidence. The combination of calm delivery and structured argumentation left little room for emotional theatrics to dominate. Observers realized that the hearing was no longer about shouting or confrontation. It was about truth, clarity, and reasoned discussion. By the afternoon, Crockett had dismantled most of Bondi's objections with composure and factual reasoning. Each response reinforced her credibility and professionalism. And social media users were quick to highlight how effectively she managed the confrontation without resorting to aggression. Clips circulated emphasizing Crockett's calm demeanor, her precise explanations, and the contrast with Bondi's emotionally charged interruptions. even Bondi supporters began to acknowledge Crockett's skill. Analysts commented on her ability to turn a potentially chaotic session into a demonstration of effective leadership. Preparation and professionalism. Viewers marveled at how evidence-based argumentation could command attention. More effectively than shouting or theatrics, Crockett's team monitored reactions closely. Lena Ortiz, her communications director, noted, "The message is resonating nationwide. People are talking about professionalism, credibility, and the importance of clear communication under pressure. This is a teaching moment as much as a hearing." Crockett nodded. Exactly. The goal was never to humiliate or overwhelm. It's about showing that preparation, composure, and facts matter in public discourse. People respect reason more than spectacle, and that's the point we're making. As the session drew to a close, Crockett summarized her points, reinforcing the evidence, connecting the discussion to broader implications, and highlighting the importance of transparency and accountability. Bondi, exhausted from her attempts to assert dominance, appeared frustrated but had no effective response to Crockett's calm reasoning. When the gavel fell, the room erupted in muted applause and acknowledgement of Crockett's skill. Reporters quickly packed their notes, while social media users amplified the clips of her composed responses. Analysts debated the hearing on news shows, focusing not on conflict but on the lesson. In high-pressure political situations.com. Evidence-based communication consistently outweighs emotional intensity. Crockett left the chamber quietly. Our team closed behind. She didn't celebrate. Instead, she reflected on the significance of the moment. The viral clips weren't just about a confrontation. They were about how preparation, professionalism, and clarity can influence public perception and elevate discourse. The story resonated far beyond the chamber. Political watchers, educators, and ordinary citizens used the session as an example of leadership, strategic communication, and moral clarity in action. Crockett had turned a tense, high-profile confrontation into a demonstration of effective, principled public service. By the end of the week, the narrative had shifted. Discussions were no longer centered on who shouted louder, but on who presented the facts clearly, handled pressure with grace, and maintained professionalism under scrutiny. Crockett's calm, factual approach had left a lasting impression, demonstrating the enduring value of composure, preparation, and evidence in public debate.